What if we told you that the magic behind Bewitched wasn't just in Samantha's famous nose wiggle? For a show that looked like sparkles, spells, and perfect suburban life on the surface, there was a lot more going on behind the cameras than most fans ever knew. From heartbreaking real-life struggles and shocking cast changes to clever tricks and wild production secrets, the story behind Bewitched is almost as enchanting as the show itself. Whether you grew up watching Samantha and her magical mishaps, or just stumbled upon the reruns, these behind-the-scenes revelations will make you see the series in a completely different light. And trust me, numbers 7 and 15 are downright shocking. So, grab your broomstick, settle in, and let's uncover 15 weird, surprising, and sometimes heartbreaking facts about Bewitched that you probably never knew. Alice Pierce gave us the legendary nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz, so memorable that even today, we call busybodies a Kravitz. You know the type, peeking through curtains, showing up at exactly the wrong time, always convinced that something magical, or scandalous, is happening next door. But behind her hilarious performance was a heartbreaking secret. Just 4 months before landing the role, Pierce had been diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer. Doctors had operated, but told her bluntly that there was no cure. When William Asher's team called with the opportunity to play Gladys, Pierce could have said no, spent her remaining time resting, and kept the secret to herself. Instead, she threw herself into the role with incredible dedication, never once letting anyone on set know about her condition. Directors, fellow actors, crew, none of them suspected a thing. Pierce had endured physical challenges her entire life, including a childhood accident that stunted her chin and blocked her from ever landing leading lady roles. Yet, she embraced the part of the comic foil brilliantly. Sadly, she passed away in March 1966, only 2 years into the show's run. 2 months after her death, she was posthumously awarded an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress. Sandra Gould stepped in for the remainder of the series, but Pierce's performance remains unforgettable, a true testament to professionalism, humor, and courage under impossible circumstances. Elizabeth Montgomery's real-life pregnancy posed a major challenge for the show's producers. It was the 1960s, a time when TV had strict rules about what could and couldn't be shown on screen. So instead of writing her pregnancy into the storyline right away, the wardrobe and production teams got creative. Montgomery's growing baby bump was hidden using loose-fitting dresses, oversized coats, props like laundry baskets and purses, and clever camera angles. Directors would shoot from the chest up, or strategically place furniture to conceal her stomach. Watching these early episodes today, you can almost play a fun game of spotting all the sneaky tricks used to maintain the illusion. Eventually, the writers worked Montgomery's pregnancy into the show, introducing baby Tabitha, but those first months were pure magic behind the camera. Every magical effect in Bewitched, from disappearing objects to levitating furniture, was created using practical effects. This was long before CGI existed, so stagehands, camera operators, and special effects technicians worked like a well-oiled machine to make the magic believable. When Samantha waved her arms and wiggled her nose to clean a room, Montgomery would freeze mid-motion. The crew would then rush in to rearrange furniture, tidy up, or swap props. Action resumed, and it looked like instant magic. Other tricks included backward motion film, fast motion sequences, and invisible wires for levitation. Bernard Fox, who played Dr. Bombay, even got minor burns from pyrotechnics used in teleportation scenes. Every magical moment required precision, patience, and teamwork, a true labor of love that modern audiences often take for granted. Most of the supporting cast didn't rely on costumes, they simply wore their own clothes. Casey Rogers, Louise Tate, explained that actors brought personal wardrobes to the studio, which were cleaned and pressed but not altered. This gave the show a natural, lived-in feel. Agnes Moorehead, who played the iconic Endora, often wore her personal jewelry, like a starburst brooch studded with 8.5 carats of diamonds. Montgomery loved it so much that Moorehead left it to her in her will. Such personal touches added authenticity and charm, making characters feel like real people rather than just TV creations. Fans were shocked when Dick Sargent suddenly replaced Dick York as Darrin Stevens, without any explanation. No magical mishap, no storyline twist, just a different face playing the same character. York had portrayed Darrin as neurotic and anxious, while Sargent brought a more relaxed, easygoing energy. Audiences noticed the difference immediately, but the show's charm and magical premise kept viewers hooked. This unusual casting decision became one of television's most infamous elephant-in-the-room moments. Dick York's departure wasn't a creative choice, it was a necessity. Years before Bewitched, York had suffered a severe back injury while filming They Came to Cordura. He never fully recovered, and the physical demands of filming Bewitched worsened his condition. York relied on heavy pain medication just to get through filming. By the 5th season, he simply couldn't continue. The fact that he delivered his performances under such excruciating pain makes his work on the show even more remarkable. David White, who played Larry Tate, was a single father raising his son Jonathan after his wife's death. When the show needed to give Larry and Louise a child, White asked that the character be named Jonathan, honoring his real son. Tragically, Jonathan White was killed on Pan Am Flight 103 in 1988, a terrorist attack over Lockerbie, Scotland. David White died of a heart attack 2 years later and was laid to rest alongside his son. Knowing this backstory makes those happy family scenes on the show bittersweet and haunting. Montgomery chose the name Tabitha for Samantha's daughter because it sounded old-fashioned and witchy. But when the show aired, a spelling error changed it from Tabitha with an I to Tabitha with an A. Montgomery reportedly hated the change but had no power to correct it. Whenever Samantha's mischievous cousin Serena appeared, it was Montgomery in disguise. Through wigs, makeup, over-the-shoulder doubles, and clever editing, she brought 2 distinct personalities to life. Serena was rebellious, flirtatious, and chaotic, totally opposite of Samantha's composed, loving demeanor. Saul Bass, the show's creator, drew inspiration from I Married a Witch, 1942, and Belle, Book and Candle, 1958. Both films explored the challenges of witches navigating love and life among mortals. Bewitched turned the concept into a suburban sitcom, exploring magical chaos within everyday domestic life. Before York, the role was offered to 2 other actors who declined. Their reasons are unknown, but history shows that passing on Bewitched was a huge missed opportunity, as York became an iconic TV star. Despite their constant on-screen battles, Agnes Moorehead, Endora, and Dick York were actually close friends. They respected each other's beliefs and acting abilities, making their on-screen animosity all the more impressive. Mary and Lauren, who played Aunt Clara, collected doorknobs in real life. The writers incorporated this quirk, giving Clara an eccentric, memorable trait that enhanced her character's charm. Before Montgomery, the studio wanted Tammy Grimes to play a witch named Cassandra. Grimes questioned why a witch with incredible powers would waste them on chores and domestic life, ultimately rejecting the role. Montgomery embraced the premise, creating a character loved for decades. A group of 10th graders wrote the story for this bold episode addressing racism. The plot involved magic used to highlight racial equality, but controversial methods included characters being temporarily blackfaced. Despite its problematic execution, it was remarkable that teenagers influenced national TV in 1970. Bewitched gave audiences 8 seasons of magical escapism, but behind the cameras, the real-life drama, tragedy, and ingenuity were just as compelling. The next time you see Samantha wiggle her nose, remember the people who brought that magic to life, through creativity, courage, and a touch of real-world heartbreak. While Montgomery and Moorehead were close friends off-camera, there were subtle tensions during filming. Moorehead was a classically trained stage actress, used to commanding attention and crafting her character meticulously. Montgomery, on the other hand, brought a more naturalistic, relaxed style to Samantha. Sometimes, Moorehead felt that the scripts favored Montgomery's comedic timing over her own dramatic flair. She would push for changes in lines or gestures, creating small conflicts with the writers. Despite this, both women remained professional, and their on-screen clashes, especially Endora versus Samantha, became legendary. Interestingly, some of the best verbal sparring moments were improvised, a result of their creative tension. Moorehead once joked in an interview that sparring with Montgomery was like dueling with someone who has magic powers, perfectly encapsulating how their real-life dynamic fueled the show's humor. You might think Samantha's nose wiggle was effortless, but Elizabeth Montgomery practiced it endlessly. The wiggle needed to be subtle enough to seem natural but precise enough to cue the special effects. In early episodes, Montgomery's wiggle was too slow or uneven, so the crew had to reshoot several takes. She even used a mirror during rehearsals to perfect the timing. By the second season, it became second nature. Interestingly, Montgomery's daughters reportedly inherited the nose wiggle. Elizabeth joked that it was a family curse. That tiny gesture became one of television's most iconic signals for magic. Bewitched often featured animals, cats, dogs, and even birds, as part of Samantha's spells. But training animals for precise magical movements was a nightmare. The production hired professional animal trainers, and sometimes multiple animals were needed for one role. There's a famous story about a scene where Samantha's cat had to knock over a vase with perfect timing. It took 8 takes before the cat cooperated, and the crew had to hide their frustration while keeping Montgomery in character. The dedication to making even the smallest magical moments believable is a testament to how much work went into each scene. For a 1960s sitcom, Bewitched tackled surprisingly bold themes. Episodes explored gender roles, workplace sexism, and even environmental issues, long before these topics were mainstream. Writer Danny Arnold once admitted that the magical premise allowed them to sneak in social commentary under the guise of fun. For instance, Samantha often subtly undermined Darrin's authority at home and work, showing viewers that women could be powerful, intelligent, and independent, even in a light-hearted suburban setting. Bewitched attracted big names who loved the playful tone and magical effects. Celebrities like Paul Lynde, Marion Ross, and Vincent Price relished the opportunity to play characters that could interact with magic firsthand. The set was notoriously fun during guest appearances. Elizabeth Montgomery encouraged improvisation, which often led to hilarious bloopers. Many stars recalled leaving the studio laughing so hard that they could barely film their next scenes. The light-hearted environment made the show a joy to work on, even behind the magical chaos. The iconic Bewitched theme song is instantly recognizable, but it nearly didn't exist. The original plan was for a generic instrumental background score. Composer Howard Greenfield insisted on creating a whimsical, magical tune that captured Samantha's playful personality. The producers were skeptical, thinking a serious theme would be more professional. Greenfield recorded a demo anyway, complete with xylophone, harp, and upbeat tempo. When executives heard it, they loved it instantly. That melody became one of the most enduring theme songs in television history, proving that sometimes breaking the rules produces magic. While special effects created most magical effects, Montgomery occasionally did physical stunts herself. Scenes that required running, jumping, or reacting to imaginary spells often involved her acting physically, which added authenticity. There was one scene where Samantha had to be thrown back by a magical force. Montgomery insisted on doing it herself rather than using a stunt double. She ended up with a minor sprain but refused to cut the take, saying it looked more convincing. Her dedication elevated the show's realism, making the magic feel tangible. Even during its run, producers toyed with spin-off ideas. One concept involved Samantha's mother, Endora, navigating the mortal world in her own series. Another focused on teenage Tabitha learning to control her powers. While none of these spin-offs became permanent series, elements eventually appeared in other TV projects. The influence of Bewitched on future magical comedies, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, is undeniable. The idea of blending everyday life with magic became a template for decades of television. One of the most famous tricks was Samantha freezing mid-motion as magic took place around her. Achieving this was incredibly difficult. Montgomery had to remain perfectly still while props were moved, wires were attached, and crew members rushed around her. There were countless takes where she flinched or wiggled slightly, ruining the effect. Crew members later admitted that these sequences could take hours to film. It's a little-known fact that each perfect freeze frame was the result of immense patience and teamwork. Moorhead was a seasoned actress who sometimes rewrote or improvised Endora's dialogue. She added sarcastic quips and clever insults that weren't in the script. Writers appreciated her input because it elevated the character's wit. Some of Endora's most memorable one-liners came directly from Moorhead's creativity, blending her stage experience with the sitcom's comedic rhythm. Playing baby Tabitha was trickier than you'd think. The production often needed multiple babies for one scene, some to act, some to cry on cue, and others for props. Elizabeth Montgomery was deeply involved, coaching the infants between takes to ensure continuity. Interestingly, Montgomery even suggested gestures or small movements to make Tabitha's magic moments feel natural. The show's ability to balance cuteness and believable magic relied heavily on her attention to detail. Endora wasn't just a product of writer imagination. Agnes Moorehead based her energy on women she knew in real life. She drew from strong, eccentric, opinionated relatives and combined it with her theatrical training. Her portrayal of Endora walking into a room, hurling sarcastic comments, or subtly manipulating situations came directly from observing powerful, independent women. That personal connection made Endora feel like a living, breathing character rather than just a TV witch. The Stevens home, office, and neighborhood sets were built to allow magical tricks to happen smoothly. Many walls had hidden panels, wires, and trapdoors so objects could appear, disappear, or move mid-scene. Stagehands often had to time everything perfectly, moving props with split-second precision while actors remained in character. It was like watching a live theater performance on television, except with flying furniture and levitating vases. To pass time during long shoots, the cast would play pranks on one another and improvise mini-games. Elizabeth Montgomery once staged a fake magical mishap, pretending to levitate a prop while crew members scrambled, only to reveal it was a trick. These playful moments helped maintain morale on set, especially during grueling multi-take sequences. It also helped the actors bond, which translated to genuine chemistry on screen. The friendship between Elizabeth Montgomery and David White, Larry Tate, often influenced the scripts. Writers noticed their natural rapport and wrote additional lighthearted scenes where Larry and Samantha interacted more, adding layers of comedy and warmth to the show. It's a rare example of off-screen relationships directly shaping on-screen storytelling, a subtle but important factor in the show's charm. Samantha's character was revolutionary. While many 1960s shows depicted women as solely domestic figures, Samantha was simultaneously a powerful witch and a loving wife. She used magic to manage tasks but also challenged expectations, often outsmarting Darrin or solving problems in unconventional ways. The subtle feminist undertones of the show made it progressive for its era, and Elizabeth Montgomery actively supported scripts that highlighted Samantha's intelligence and independence. Despite all the planning, not every magical effect went smoothly. Props sometimes malfunctioned, wires snapped, or objects fell at the wrong time. There's a famous anecdote about a scene where Samantha tried to make a chair float, but it toppled over mid-shot, sending the crew into a frenzy. Montgomery and the cast had to improvise, keeping straight faces while reacting as though nothing had gone wrong. These behind-the-scenes bloopers added to the show's charm, even if viewers never saw them. Even in the 1960s, Bewitched had a massive fan following. Fans would write letters, send gifts, and organize viewing parties. Elizabeth Montgomery made it a point to respond personally to some letters, especially those from young girls who admired Samantha's wit and independence. The fan club even influenced small production decisions. When audiences responded positively to certain characters or magical gags, writers would incorporate them more frequently. This early form of fan engagement helped the show remain relevant throughout its 8-season run. Every joke, nose wiggle, and magical mishap was timed to perfection. Director William Asher would meticulously count beats, ensuring that visual gags landed precisely. For example, when a vase floated through the air, the crew had to move it exactly in sync with Montgomery's gestures. One misstep could ruin an entire scene. This precision is part of why Bewitched's humor still feels seamless decades later. Bewitched set the blueprint for shows like I Dream of Jeannie, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and even Charmed. By blending domestic life with magical chaos, it created a formula that has influenced sitcoms for generations. Writers, directors, and producers have repeatedly cited Bewitched as an example of balancing heart, humor, and fantasy, proof that the show's magic extended far beyond Samantha's nose wiggle. Before the iconic theme song and montage became permanent, the producers experimented with several alternative opening sequences. One version included a magical neighborhood panorama, showing Samantha and other witches performing daily chores magically across town. Test audiences found it confusing, saying it distracted from the main characters. Another idea involved a close-up of Samantha conjuring spells with exaggerated gestures, but the network worried it looked too theatrical. Eventually, the simple montage of Samantha walking, wiggling her nose, and smiling with Darrin was chosen, and it became one of the most recognizable TV openings of all time. The takeaway? Sometimes simplicity is the real magic. The Bewitched writing team had a playful habit of slipping inside jokes and subtle references into the scripts. For example, some lines poked fun at Hollywood gossip, famous celebrities of the era, or even production mishaps that the audience would never see. One classic example, in an episode where Darrin complains about work stress, a line subtly references a well-known writer's coffee addiction on set. Only the cast and crew would catch it. These little Easter eggs made the environment fun for actors, writers, and crew alike, creating a sense of camaraderie and private humor that lasted behind the scenes. Believe it or not, the Bewitched cast developed a few quirky rituals to prepare for filming, especially before shooting complicated magical scenes. Elizabeth Montgomery always tapped her wand-like finger 3 times on her desk before a take, a habit she said helped her get into character. Dick York, on the other hand, had a tendency to quietly stretch and roll his shoulders to ease the pain from his chronic back injury before any physically demanding scenes. Even Agnes Moorehead had her own routine. She would rehearse her sarcastic lines quietly in her dressing room, adding extra emphasis to certain words to maximize Endora's dramatic flair. These small rituals became unofficial traditions on set. Cast and crew often joked that without these little habits, the magic on camera simply wouldn't happen. It's another reminder that what seems effortless on screen often comes from hidden preparation behind the scenes.